I'm Heather Vale for Performance Marketing Insider, and joining me today is Andy Dhanik, VP of Performance Advertising for Engage BDR. Hey, Andy, thanks for being here with us today.
Yeah, no problem, Heather.
So we're going to talk today about managed campaigns as opposed to RTB, but first let's kind of put it into perspective. Why would someone start out with RTB as opposed to jumping right into a managed campaign?
So there's a few reasons, and I think the most important reason would be that they're just starting out and they need a place to benchmark and test their campaigns before they kind of bring it into the big leagues. And so the RTB solution is great specifically for that. There's a lot of inexpensive inventory that you can pick up across that platform, leverage it to test and optimize, figure out specifically who your audience is, what creative and landing page combinations work, and then once you're ready to start scaling into more of like a guaranteed inventory type situation, then they would come over to the fully managed portion of our business. So RTB is great for a few reasons. As I mentioned earlier, inventory for the most part is remnant inventory that we aggregate from both our direct relationships as well as the usual suspects, the SSPs of the world that we're connected to. And a lot of that inventory being remnant means that it's going to be less expensive. So it's easy. It's a low barrier to entry for someone to get in and test. So whereas on the fully managed solution, our network-wide average CPMs are somewhere in the $3, $4 CPM ballpark. You can pick up a lot of inventory for sub $2, even sub $1 CPMs, depending on the geo that you're bidding in through the real-time bidding platform, and that allows you to collect a lot of data for a little bit of money, and that's basically the gist of the RTB platform, is to collect as much data when you're building a new campaign as humanly possible, while spending as little as possible. Once you collect that data, figure out specifically who your demographic is, the landing page creative combinations, and you're ready to move into a more of a non-remnant type platform, then you would move over to the managed side. So what I specifically mean when you're looking for guaranteed inventory on the managed platform versus what you get in first impression. First impression, with it being remnant traffic, a lot of it is going to change from day to day or week to week. So the remnant inventory that's going to be available from each site, 1 week it may be here, the next week it may be gone. For example, let's say if CNN.com had a direct sales effort and somehow they sold out all of their inventory for this week, they don't have any remnant inventory available right now. But let's say next week they don't have they don't anticipate any strong articles or editorials on the site that'll drive a ton of users to their site, so they may end up having a bunch of remnant inventory left over that they need to auction off, and that's the inventory that we may be getting a hold of through the RTB. So while you may have it 1 week, it may be gone the next. So it's difficult to really start building scale with a campaign when you have issues like that. So on the fully managed platform, everything that we're buying is directly from the publisher, which we negotiate an insertion order, and all the inventory is guaranteed inventory. So if we're buying it at a $3 CPM and we're saying we want the homepage impression for a set number of dates, that's what we're getting without any fluctuation.
Okay, but why would I want to test with remnant inventory when my results with the premium sites might be totally different?
Well, that's a really good question. So the remnant inventory, just as I mentioned earlier, is really just a testing ground. You don't want to go into a buy and be paying high CPMs without knowing how the audience is going to respond to it. So what you'll end up finding is you may end up going into a buy direct with, let's say, CNN.com again. Let's say you're paying $3 CPM for the premium stuff, whereas you can get the remnant stuff for maybe a third of that, or even less than a third of that, a quarter of that, and find out it didn't work. So at that point, you're at a much greater loss than you would have been if you had tested the same number of impressions at a lower rate. So that's just the idea behind it, is getting in, collecting a bunch of data for as little bit of money as possible. figuring out what works, and then bringing it to scale.
Okay. Is it simply about collecting the data, or do you think it's important for an advertiser to kind of understand the process by getting their hands in there and basically getting
Yeah.
dirty with it first?
Yeah, no. So that also is something huge for and a performance advertiser to understand specifically how media buys work, and that data that they gain when they're doing their own buys helps them across any other buys that they may make, whether it be a managed platform or whether it may be any direct publishers that they're buying from. They're able to take that data and apply that same situational information to across all the platforms and all the publishers that they're buying from. So if they notice, for example, they're buying media on the RTB and they're finding that most of their response is between the hours of 7 a.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Eastern, and they've got enough data to say that's statistically relevant, that will more than likely translate across all of the other sources that they're collecting their media from. And so just gives them a little bit more of an education on how media buys work, what the typical rates they can expect to pay for that type of traffic, and what their typical volume estimates may be.
Okay, so once I scale to a managed campaign and basically hand all that over to you guys, do you continue to test as well, or do we consider the testing pretty much done?
No, no, no. We definitely still continue to test, but we leverage the success that you've already had across the RTB for our media buys. So when you guys come to us, or when someone comes to us from the RTB platform and they want to start doing a bigger managed buy, we ask them what creatives worked inside of the RTB platform, the types of sites, the targeting that they're leveraging, and then we replicate the same setup on our end. Only difference is we're going after the more premium inventory. So once we start seeing the data come through, we will also be continuously tweaking the CPM, tweaking the day parting and frequency, to get it to back into the client's CPA target. So that you never really end up discontinuing your test. You're always testing. You're always testing new sources. We're always lighting up new sites. That's an ongoing thing. But what we pride ourselves in doing is we have the ability to leverage the insight that you've already gained across all of your other platforms, aggregate it, and go out with our experienced media buyers and try to replicate your success, and additionally grow it, of course.
Okay, so some advertisers would want to just hand the whole thing over, and some would prefer to have some kind of control still. So with the service that you offer, what kind of input does the advertiser still have access to give?
The advertiser actually has full control over the creative. We don't control any of the creative. Whatever creative they supply to us, we'll test. But they still have access to all of that. They also have access to sub-ID reporting. So, for example, if they're seeing one specific set of sub-IDs converting better on the back end, they can have us isolate down to those specific sub-IDs. If they notice something is converting really well on the front end but not well on the back end, they can also relay that same information to us. They also have the ability to tell us specifically where not to buy if they're buying somewhere else that they know that we're buying. For example, let's say they're doing a buy across, I don't know, weather.com, and they know that we're buying there. They give us that intelligence before we start the campaign. We can avoid those types of placements. Aside from that, they also do have access to a full reporting console. They can see all of their metrics. Everything that we're doing is fully transparent to them, minus the list of sites. And in some cases, we also do offer some level of transparency as well to agencies who need it.